Hi, Shruti. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well too, thanks. Let's give it a couple of minutes. I'm going to make you the host in the meantime.
All right.
Some more time for the other participants to join in. All right, you're the co-host now.
Okay.
Version?
Hi, Shruti. I think we may begin the session now. It is 9:40, and I will have the others join in the meantime. Probably joining in. There was this link missing, so people are joining in now. I'll keep adding them to the uh, meeting as and when they come in.
All right, sure.
Over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I can see some familiar faces. I mean, familiar names from last time. Just give me a minute. All right. So, how are the classes been going? Good morning, Ganesh. Good morning, Shruti. How's the experience been? What kind of transformation have you seen in yourself for the last couple of weeks or whenever this training started? Can I have some feedback from you?
Classes are going very good. To be honest,
I
before
can't hear you.
of, is it audible?
Yes, please. Yeah. Go ahead.
Classes are really going.
I can't hear you again.
And to be honest, before starting after attending the session, I feel really energetic, and it feels like really I have invested my time in right place. And I have observed the changes in myself that I used to initiate the conversation. Now I'm able to initiate the conversation with people, while earlier days I used to hesitate, and I don't feel shy anymore while speaking with others. Although I did I'm a bit conscious about what I'm saying. That is still need to be solved.
Great. What's your name again?
Ishmara.
Okay. All right. So I'm sure the others also echo the same kind of feedback that you gave. Gitanjali says the classes are really great. My soft skills have improved quite satisfactorily. One of the things that I have consciously decided to do henceforth is to stop calling these kind of skills as soft skills. Okay. No offense to anyone, but what I have seen is in the past few years, this term soft skills has been used so many times, and it's kind of diluted. And when you say soft skills, people kind of take it softly. That means they don't take it seriously. And I realize that it's not just me, but a lot of other people agree to this thing, and hence soft skills are now being called essential skills, right? Primarily for the purpose of making them sound more important, um, sound more important because they are important. So essential skills is what it is. So when you talk to the corporate also, they talk about workplace skills, they talk about behavioral skills. Soft skills is a word that we're not using too much these days because somehow the importance of the entire concept of those bucket of skills is kind of getting diluted. So probably I can request all of you to start calling these skills essential skills as well. So we have technical skills and we have essential skills, and the combination of these two skills is what makes you really attractive in the industry. Okay, so coming to today's session, it's life skills as well. Yes, life skills is another good word to use. Life skills is like a broad umbrella which covers a lot of other things also. It can be survival skills also. Yeah, so like life skills is another good word to use. Raghuvanshi. All right, so understanding the industry needs, job market, and job profile. So these are three very diverse things. And let me see how we can kind of address all of them in today's session. So you see an image there, right, under the title. What does that image tell you? What is your interpretation? What is your understanding of that image?
What are the basic need of a person?
The basic needs of a person, yes. And we usually call these things as. Okay, so why do you think I've put these things on this slide, in the introduction slide?
Maybe we are going to discuss about industrial needs. That's why I want to look on the what is the basic need of an industry.
All right, so fine. That's one way of looking at it. So basically, it's roti kapra makan, right? And that is all we all kind of. So if you look at the need pyramid, so the basic needs are these things. So some of you Shruti says right. These are basic needs, definitely. In order to excel in today's market, what we are going to learn today is probably the roti kapra makan of your um, job search or the way you get into the market. These are the basic things that we are going to discuss today. I'll try and work on the mindset aspect when it comes to industry needs. Now it's very difficult to define these things because these are very, very, very dynamic concepts. Okay, so I might say that this is how you this is what the industry needs are, but 6 months down the line it just might not be applicable because there have been so much the changes in the industry, in the way hiring processes happen, in the way the skill sets are being changed, in the way the industry is prioritizing skill sets itself. So there are so many changes that are happening. So I'll kind of address the mindset aspect of it. So once you understand the way you have to understand the industry or the way you have to think about the industry, then probably whatever be the dynamic changes, you'll still be able to adapt to that. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's the context for the session today. We'll also see how to understand the job market, and we'll take a job description as such and see how we can understand the job profile based on that, and then how you can introduce yourself or how you can kind of customize your resume or your introduction based on the job profile. So does that sound good? Is that meeting your expectations of today's session? Is that what you had in mind when you came into this session?
Yes,
Am
ma'am.
I kind of in sync with your expectations for the day? Any point of time, there are any questions you can ask, and don't keep it till the end. I don't mind you have us having an interaction. All right. So we'll start with one of the most asked questions in the world. What does the industry actually want? And trust me, nobody has an answer to that question. Everybody has their own answers. No answer is wrong. No answer is right. It's all in the gray zone. Again, it's a matter of different perspectives. But what actually does the industry want? We don't know, right? So in such situations, what and why is it that the industry doesn't know? Why is it that there is so much ambiguity? Let's try to understand that aspect, and probably that will give us a little more clarity. Okay. Now, when I think of the year 2020, if I have to translate that in picture, this is one thing that I found really appropriate. Do you agree with me? There was a world which was going on the way it is going on. And then 2020 came and one sucker punch in the face. I mean, this is how I visualize. If I have to visualize, I'm a visual thinker. So whenever I'm thinking, I create images in my picture, in my mind. So whenever I think of 2020, this is a kind of picture that comes to my mind. So it actually is a big punch in the face. Yes. So all of us have had different kind of experiences with this year, 2020. Now, if I were to ask you to describe this year in one word, what would your word be? Again, different people have had different experiences through this entire experience, right? It's been different for different people. Some people have kind of improved their lifestyles also. So, how has it been for you? Which is the one word that you will use to describe the year 2020? Test for humanity, okay. Salim, unexpected. Yes. Gitanjali says unexpected. Any other word that you can come up with? Think of your experience through this time.
Sudden downfall.
Sachin says, pardon me, I didn't get you. Could you repeat that? Whoever said
Sudden downfall.
sudden
Downfall.
downfall. Okay. A sudden downfall, destruction, unexpected, test for humanity. There are so many things, right? But even before 2020 came, there were lots of changes that were happening, because of which 2020 actually solidified that concept that people were talking about. Okay. And that is this. Have you heard about the VUCA world? I'm sure you have in some context. Have you heard of this acronym? No? All right. So VUCA is an acronym that has been used to describe the world today. Okay. It's been used in multiple contexts. But if you want to really understand the meaning of this acronym, 2020 is an example. Okay. So VUCA, VUCA, where V stands for volatile. The present world is extremely volatile. Volatile means it is very dynamic, everything is changing, nothing is constant. But more importantly, the rate of change is very, very fast, right? What happens 3 months, last quarter, I don't know if the same thing will happen this quarter. So the rate of change is so very fast these days. So V stands for volatile. U stands for uncertain. There is a lot of confusion. There is no clarity about the future. We don't know when colleges are reopening. We don't know when travel is going to start again. We don't know a lot of things. So there is so much of confusion. C stands for complex. There are too many elements in play right now, which makes the decision making process very, very difficult. Now, all these are not exclusive concepts, right? They're all interconnected in some way or the other. Decision making becomes a problem when there is too much complexity in the system. And then A stands for ambiguity. Ambiguous. That means, again, there is no clarity. You can't make out black and white. There's no black and white, it's all gray, so there's no correct answers. So this is the kind of world that we are living in right now. Do you agree with me? Is this the right acronym to describe the present situations? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And have you experienced all these emotions or feelings or thoughts in the last couple of years? Yes? And if we are experiencing it, trust me, the industry is also experiencing the same thing. Now we are looking at it from the personal point of view. Industry looks at it from the business point of view, from productivity point of view, from their employee point of view. Most of the decisions that are being taken are being taken keeping these aspects in mind, considering the fact that there is volatility, there is uncertainty, there is complexity, and there is ambiguity, which is why it is very difficult to define the needs of the industry and how it's going to change in the next 6 months. Okay. Now, this kind of a world that we are living in, what is the kind of impact that it has on businesses and on people? Okay. Now, where there is volatility, there is fear. That is the first thing, because you don't know how things are going to be. There is an inherent sense of insecurity and fear in our minds, which makes us averse to taking risks, which is what a lot of businesses are doing these days. First, previously the businesses that used to go in, which were risk takers, these days are not taking a lot of risks because already there is so much risk in the market. I don't know how many of you follow the stock market, but if you see how the stock market has been fluctuating over the last 1.5 years, it absolutely makes no sense, right? The economy is going down, but the share prices are going up. We don't know what the connection is. So there is aversion to risk. And there is this mindset which says back to basics, which means let us just focus on the basics right now and nothing else, right? So that is one impact of a volatile world. Uncertainty. Where there is uncertainty, something called an analysis paralysis sets into the head. That means when things are not uncertain, you automatically try to analyze the situation and try to make it kind of certain, right? When you're confused about something, you always want to analyze it and get the confusion out. You want some more clarity. But because that is not happening, you keep analyzing and analyzing. Suddenly, what happens after a point of time, your mind kind of freezes, and that stage is called analysis paralysis. Your analytical skills kind of get paralyzed after a point of time. And when that happens, we tend to jump to the first conclusion that comes to our mind because we don't want to analyze anymore. That again leads to incorrect decisions and a lot of confusion, right? That is what happens usually when things are uncertain. You might have experienced this in your life also. Connect this, whatever we are speaking about, no? Connect it to different situations in your life when you experience uncertainty, when you experience volatility, and see if this fits into your thing also. Third is complexity. So when there is too much complex, the brain is such a thing, it kind of wants to simplify everything. The brain doesn't like complexity. The brain likes, we talk about multitasking skills and all this, but the brain doesn't like it. The mind likes to focus on one thing at a time. Because we are so busy and because we want to improve productivity, we talk about multitasking and things like that. But if you look at it, the brain cannot focus on more than two things at a time, two or three max. But if you do one thing at a time, that is what it is most comfortable doing. But when there is complexity, that doesn't happen. There are a million thoughts coming into your mind, right? So at that point of time, what will the mind do? It will automatically crave for black and white solutions. Again, this is a kind of analysis paralysis. You kind of want to simplify everything, oversimplify it sometimes. And we fall prey to something called scapegoating, which means there is a blame game going on. Is I'm not responsible for this. I had to do this because something else happened. That guy made me do this, right? When there is complexity, we start playing the blame game. And then there is ambiguity. Ambiguity means we don't know. I mean, there is increased doubt, and when there is doubt, you don't tend to trust people. You hesitate before trusting people. The entire decision making process gets impeded. All these are the negative impacts of VUCA world. Now, have you experienced all these things in the last couple of years? Do you relate to what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Can you give me an example of what kind of
So,
confusion or what
example,
kind of ambiguity you've gone through? Yeah.
I have faced analysis paralysis while playing chess. Sometimes I feel that I don't know the next move. Somehow I just make a move. Not
Okay, great.
uh, this situation, dynamic situation, but I feel that that time I like it analysis paralysis.
Your
I, don't-
experience analysis
I
paralysis.
just try to move whatever I can.
Yeah, yeah. And usually is that the right move?
No, actually not. Sometimes it happened to be a right move.
Mm,
Sometimes it turn out to be advantage, but most of the time it make me difficult situation. It make
right, true. Great. That was a fantastic example. Anybody else who can give me an example like this where you experienced some of these things? Uncertainty of opening the college. Yes, I think we've all been battling with that in the past few days. So great. So I'm sure all of you have experienced all these things at some point of time. So now I want you to think of the bigger picture, right? So if you have experienced this, think of the bigger picture. Think of the industry as a whole, right? Now the industry is responsible for the economy. It's responsible for all the goods and services and the basic roti kapda makan that we are all dependent on. Now, when the entire world goes through aspects like these, what is the focus on? The industry is definitely going to focus on changing the scenario. The industry wants to change volatility from stable movement. They don't want to stagnate, of course, but from a volatile movement, they want to have a more stable movement. From uncertainty, they want a certain element of certainty in their work, in their life, and in different elements. From complexity, they want to kind of make it slightly uncomplicated. Businesses and industry are never totally uncomplicated, but at least some element of simplicity. And from ambiguity, they want certain clarity, right? Now, what is industry basically? An industry is not one entity which is disconnected from people. It's 100 people, 500 people, 1,000 people together working towards one common goal or working on certain common processes that make an industry, right? And when I say that the industry is looking to have this kind of a transformation, that means every person who is involved in the industry has to work towards this kind of transformation. Does that make sense? Yes? Does it or does it not? If there are 500 people in a company and the company says that, now my company is going to become a more stable company, is it possible for them to achieve that if every person in that company is not working towards that goal? It is not possible, right? Now, what is the meaning of that? Now, when the industry is saying that we want stable movement, we want some certainty, we want to make it slightly simple, we want more clarity, it means that they want everyone, each one of the employee to be aligned with that thought process, right? So if you ask me in a nutshell, what is the industry looking for right now? And trust me, being the head of corporate relations, my day to day, everything, from morning to evening, the only thing I'm doing is talking to different corporates and trying to understand what they want. And the common answers that I get from everybody, if I could bucket them into different things, this is what it is. They say, we want people with certain mindset, we want people who can make sense of confusion, we want people who can solve problems. So basically what they're all trying to say is we want people who can handle the present VUCA world. Okay. Now this is possible only by a combination of technical competence, of course, and essential skills. Okay, so in brief, what is the industry looking for right now? Industry is looking for people who can bring some sanity in a VUCA world. Okay, now this concept translates into multiple things. Let's look at all that for the rest of the thing today. So technical competence, what does it mean? It means the industry expects you to be technically competent. That means being freshers, your basics have to be very strong. I'm not going to elaborate because I'm sure you've heard this a million times previously. But what is more important is the practical application of skills that can only happen when you involve yourself in that practical applications through internships, projects, hackathons, and things like that. And the third and very, very important thing is do something innovative. Okay. Pick up a problem, solve it. Even if you don't solve it, start working on it. But an industry wants somebody who has a problem solving mindset. And you can't just go to the interview and say, when the interviewer asks, what are your strengths? You can't just say that my strength is problem solving. It's very easy to say that. But what is the proof that you actually have that attitude in yourself? You should have worked on some problems while in college. You come up with some kind, it can be something as simple as how do I solve the, I don't know, how do you solve the water problem existing in your hostel? Now, this is not a technical question, but if you have been able to do something about it, that means that the mindset is there. You have the mind of solving problem, right? So you have to have done something innovative, essentially in lines of solving a problem to actually show that you have that skill. Now, there are three options given here, right? First option is a degree certificate without skill. Option 2 is degree certificate with skill. Option 3 is skill without degree certificate. Now, I request all of you to, in chat, please prioritize these. If you were the hiring manager and you were to prioritize the three options, which kind of candidate would be your first preference? Which would be second preference? Which would be third preference?
2, 3, and 1.
2, 3, and 1. So Nitish also says 2, 3, 1. Hemant says 2, 3, 1. Baljit says 2, 3, 1.
But
Yes.
then,
So I think we are all.
but then now people are looking for rather than skill, they are looking for degree, degree certificate.
They will
Like,
not.
even if they don't have a skill.
That is why option 1.
I just want to clarify.
If
Even if they don't have a skill, if they're
Yes.
having a good degree certificate from a tier 1 university, then they are getting the jobs, right?
They will not get a job. They'll flunk the technical round of the interview, or they'll not get a job in some kinds. In some level, they'll lose it. No company wants to take people. What will you do with a degree certificate? A company will not do anything with a degree certificate. Why do they choose tier 1? That's a good point you brought out. Why do people go to tier 1 colleges in the first place? Why are tier 1 colleges given that preference? Primarily because they assume that these people are brighter and have a higher level of IQ. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. But then in some cases, some people will lack the skill. Like every person will not have the equal skill. Some people from a low university might have a better skill set than.
I agree. So what I'm saying is, in the interview, they're not just going to look at the certificate you have, but they're going to see whether you have the capability to learn. Now, a bright student might, for whatever reason, could be financial, could be lack of awareness. Probably some bright student sitting in some village is not even aware of NITs. That doesn't mean that he's not intelligent, but probably because he did not know how to get an admission into a college like this, he ended up in some other college. But when he goes for an interview, if he shows that he has the capability to learn, if he shows that he's trainable, he will get the job. Again, not all companies. Not all companies will take that risk. But in the last few years, we have seen a lot of change in the mindsets of the hiring managers. Initially, last 5 to 10 years back, degree certificates were very important. But now you see companies like Google and Apple taking college dropouts, right? And they appreciate people who focus more on skill. In fact, the founders of these companies were dropouts themselves. So first option is definitely somebody who has a certificate and has the skill. Nothing can beat. That's a deadly combination. You can't beat that combination. That is definitely the first preference. Second is skill without degree also works, but a degree certificate without skill, that means the person is not even capable of learning. No company is going to invest in a person like that. Now, what we have to understand is every employee that the industry takes is an investment. not just in terms of your salary, but to train you to. There's a lot of hidden costs that go into every employee. It is not just the salary cost. Now, why will a company invest so much into a person who just has a degree that to hang on the wall? The bottom line for the company is, how can this person contribute to my company? Can he increase my productivity? Can he increase my bottom line or top line or whatever? Right? So just having a degree and just thinking that, okay, because I'm from a tier one college, I'm definitely going to get a job, that is a wrong perception, because companies are not thinking like that these days. That is one of the major thing, especially in the last 1 year, I have seen that happen. And most interestingly, there have been some companies, I won't name them, but when I've had interactions with them, they've told us that it is okay if the person has just done a basic 3-year degree, but if he has done certain high level certification courses which are available online, or he has ranked high in some of the national or international level hackathons and competitions like that, we would be happy to look at such profiles. And this is what the industry has actually, and there are a couple of companies who have said that, not just one. There are at least 2 companies I can recall right away who have told me that. They said, so the bottom line is, if they have the capability, I will train them. But if they don't have the capability, I don't want to waste time on them. So that is what the industry, trust me, it's not previously. We'll go through the next slides and then we'll continue this discussion. But this is a good discussion to have. And trust me, it's a good problem to have. Right? So, the thing is, when you're in school, did your parents say, just work very, very hard till your 10th standard? After that, your life is going to be cool. How many of your parents said that to you when you were in 8th standard, 9th
No,
standard,
I
and
have
wouldn't
heard
want to?
those things.
Huh?
I have heard those things.
Yeah. So your parents say 10th standard is the most important year of your life. Just study very hard till 10th standard, and after that, your life is going to be better. And then we work very hard and we study and we get a good grade in 10th. And then we go to 11th and 12th. And what do people say at that point of time? They say, these 2 years are the transforming years of your life. They are life altering experiences. These 2 years, you work really, really hard, get into a good college. After that, your life is going to be cool. They want us to focus on short term goals. That's right. And then you come to college and this these 4 years you've got to work really hard, and then your life. So basically, that's what it is, right? So the skill, listening to the same thing from class 6, yes, that's to all of us. I think that's the way our parents train us. Some who this Raghuvanshi, like he rightly pointed out. For a kid, it's very difficult if you say that, study 10 years, study very hard for 10 years, and then your life, who will study? We don't even look that far at that age. So yeah, the short term goals are very, very important. But at this point of time, we have to be very sure it is not just about getting a degree. So what happens the moment we get a seat in a good college, we think now my life is sorted. And most of us, we don't even live with our parents at that point of time. At least if we are with our parents keep sitting on our head and say, study, study, study. Most of us don't even live with our parents that day. And a lot of us, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of us end up thinking that now that I am in a very good college, where the top companies come for placements, I'm sorted. My life is set. 5 years, 10 years before, that was probably applicable. Now it is not applicable. Just because you're from a tier one college, the company will not give you a special preference unless you also prove that you have the skill. There have been freshers who've got huge salary packages, big salary packages, not because they were from tier one college, but because they showed that they had the skill, right? So degree certificate with skill, deadly combination, cannot be beaten. But if you ask an HR to choose between 2 candidates, one falling in option 1 and the other falling in option 3, they will choose somebody from option 3. That is the trend right now. Skill without, if there is skill, they can be trained. But if they don't have that skill, nobody wants to put money on them. Now, Forbes conducted a study. Okay, and these were the top skills I think they interviewed around 750,000 CEOs from across the world. And then this is what they came up with. So these are the 10 skills that companies say are most important when they look for hiring. Okay, one is the growth mindset. A person should have the mind to keep growing and should never think that, okay, now that I have a job, I'm sorted, my life is set, and anyway, yearly increment, salary increment automatically will happen anyway, and I'm happy with my life. People don't want, the HRs don't want that kind of people. Somebody who learns continuously, and this is because the shelf life of technologies, the half life of technologies has come down to less than a year. That means what's the technology that you use today, you might not be using next year. So being able to learn continuously is another skill they look at. Creativity and critical thinking is again very important, because because of the VUCA world, things are changing. It's so volatile. So you have to think creatively to come up with solutions. One example here is, I think TCS, if I'm not wrong, TCS, when the lockdown happened and a lot of employees went back home. This I think TCS, I'm not sure, but this is a real incident I'm telling you. This company realized that almost 60% of its employee base was from Visakhapatnam and the surrounding areas, mostly from Visakhapatnam. So then they realized that it's difficult for people to come to Hyderabad, stay in paying guest hostels and all these things. So they said, okay, you can work from home. Now there was another problem there. There was issue with internet connectivity. There was issue with power cuts. So what do? And again, that is a temporary situation. The company cannot go and put a lot of money there and start an office there, right? Because ultimately Hyderabad is where they're properly set up. So then they came up with an innovative solution and they set up a small makeshift office, okay, a small one. And they set up 2 trucks. And these trucks, the only job that these 2 trucks did, the moment somebody faces, and there was also an issue that too many people had problems with their laptops. The only thing that these 2 trucks did, whenever people had a problem, they called this. It was like a mobile, backup service kind of thing. So immediately they go to that person's place, sort the problem out. So that is the kind of, and it worked for them. They realized that their employees were a lot more productive this way than asking them to come to Hyderabad and all this. So when situations are volatile and uncertain, companies need people who can think creatively. Okay, and survival skills is another this survival skills never featured in the top 10 most demand skills previously. But 2021, it has come in for the first time. What do we mean by survival skills? It means being able to cook also. Okay, they don't want people who are always dependent on others. They want people who are more independent in their basic survival skills. Now, in the interview, nobody will ask you, can you cook? Right? That's one of the weirdest questions, probably. But the basic survival skills, being able to take care of yourself, being able to keep yourself emotionally balanced, those kind of survival instincts is something that companies are looking at. Resilience and curiosity, dedication, coaching mindset. Now, what is this coaching mindset? Now, this is the next level of collaborative work. Previously, companies used to say that we want teamwork to be an important quality in our people. Teamwork is definitely there, but now they've gone one step beyond that and they said only teamwork is not going to do. We want the coaching mindset. So in a team, people should be able to help each other out, not just collaborate and say, okay, this is my work, this is your work, I'll do this, you'll do that. That is teamwork. But coaching mindset is when you go a step beyond that and see how you can coach your teammates, how you can groom them. If I have a skill that the other person doesn't have, how can I help the other person develop what I have? So these kind of things is they're actually looking at. Comfort with ambiguity. This is another skill which never featured previously. You should be comfortable with a confused state, which is an oxymoron in itself. Doesn't make sense. How can you be comfortable with ambiguity? But that is what they're looking at, because they know that it is going to be ambiguous. You cannot solve ambiguity. You cannot remove ambiguity. So what is the next best option? They want people who can keep their minds sane and who can work even when there is confusion and ambiguity. Adaptability is another very important thing these days, and being able to thrive in a virtual environment. Luckily, for the present generation, for your age people, this is not a big thing because we have grown up in the technology era. But for slightly older people, this became a major challenge. So these are the top skills that the industry is looking for in terms of technical competence. The mind shift is we want skill. That is the mindset. And here, in terms of the essential skills, there are certain new skills that have actually come up. Now you've got to figure out how strong you are in these skills so that the industry finds you more a better fit in their culture. Now, another aspect which is not mentioned here, but something that I have been sensing from my interactions with the industry is cultural fit. They also see, is this person culturally going to fit into my team? That means, now my team, for example, is a very casual team. We don't sit on each other's head to get things done on time. I don't have to force my team and set deadlines for them because they understand what it is. And we have that flexibility. So tomorrow, if I take somebody who doesn't have that kind of a mindset, who needs to be sat on, right? You need to be always forcing them to work, then that is not a cultural fit. So what questions do the HR put to check if the person is cultural? These questions will never be direct questions. There will be inferences from multiple different questions that they ask. Okay, for example, they'll ask you even something as simple as, tell me why I should hire you. That is one common question. Even for questions like that, the kind of answer you give, how do they derive insights? Okay, I'll address this when we come to the last part where we talk about the job profile. I'll address this Raghu there. Okay, all right. Now, so if you look at these two, okay, now they want people who have practical application, people who are able to solve problems, people who have the skill, and people who have all these qualities in them. So basically what they're looking for is not a static employee, but an entrepreneur. Okay, now you've heard of entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is somebody who starts an enterprise. Intrapreneur is somebody similar, but this is somebody who brings an entrepreneurial mindset into a company. Okay, that means you should think like an entrepreneur while being employed in another company. Does that make sense? How does an entrepreneur think? An entrepreneur is always thinking about, how do I make this work? How do I build my business? How do I ensure growth? Taking risks, yes. But you know what is most important quality? Taking ownership of tasks. And that is what companies want, because right now with the virtual working environments, it is very difficult to monitor people continuously, right? And people are creative. I'll give you one example. One of my cousins, her manager can keep tabs on whether she is logged into the system or not by monitoring the movement of the keys on the screen, or they have some kind of a system like that. Okay, so they're able to see whether this person has gone into sleep mode, is the person really working, and they kind of have a monitoring system where if there is movement of the cursor or there is some typing going on, then they know that this person is working. Now that is a system the company has come up with, thinking that there's a foolproof idea and we'll definitely know if the cursor is moving, if there is some words being typed on the screen, that means a person is working. Now the very creative solution that this girl came up with. She used to put some kind of a weight. Usually she's even used the whistle on the cooker. She just puts that whistle on the space bar on the keyboard and it takes a 10-minute, 15-minute, half an hour nap. Now on the screen, the cursor is moving, right? The company has no way of knowing that. So people do such things also. Okay, it's funny, but people do such things also. So continuous monitoring by the company in a virtual environment, irrespective, unless you have like video proctoring and all, that is too much, right? You can't barge on people's privacy that way. But what is the solution? The solution is to hire people who are responsible, who have the entrepreneurial mindset, because an entrepreneur will not do such things. An entrepreneur is going to put his mind, is going to take accountability, is going to be responsible, is going to take ownership of the task. And ownership is a big word these days, because there is something called lean management. Okay, LEAN, lean management, or you must have heard of Six Sigma concept of management. All these are quality improvement things. And one of the things that the Six Sigma concept talks about is one person being made owner of a certain process. So in companies that follow Six Sigma, and most of the companies are following Six Sigma because it enhances productivity and brings down resource usage. So what they do is they make one person responsible, owner of a certain process. So if they even talk like that. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You were telling something about Six Sigma. Now, can you please repeat, ma'am?
Six Sigma is a quality parameter. Okay, it's a concept. So what it does is it says how can you enhance the productivity of a company without enhancing much of resource thing. So the error margin, the let us say you're producing something. Let's say a company produces something, and it is producing, let us say, 1,000,000 units of a certain product. Now, according to the Six Sigma concept, the error margin for on 1,000,000 cannot be more than 0.036 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure about this, but they have something like that. So for every 100 million units manufactured, the error margin should not be more than 0.036. And they have the, how do you make this happen, right? When there is manufacturing happening, there is a lot of error also possible. So they come up with multiple processes, and this is a very beautifully developed concept. Can we use Lean Six Sigma for general use as well? You can use it in anything. Six Sigma is used in process industries, in service industries, in manufacturing industries. It's used everywhere. Even in my organization, which is a global edtech company, we use the Six Sigma concepts. So one of the things that Six Sigma says is reduce hierarchy and increase accountability in employees. So in my team, I have one person who is the owner of the social media aspect. There's one person who is the owner of product development. So that is how we talk to people. We give ownership of a certain process to certain people. Okay, now for me to trust somebody enough to make them owner of a certain process, that person needs to prove that he has the kind of skills, right? And taking ownership of something means having an entrepreneurial mindset. You don't have, that is why we encourage students to attend entrepreneurship development programs, not because you should go and start your own business, because the mindset itself is very precious to the industry. So this is a time and an age of intrapreneurs. So company are looking for intrapreneurial mindset of people who can bring in entrepreneurial mindset into their company, take ownership of tasks and work. In fact, I would recommend some of you can actually, there are these free introduction courses available on Six Sigma and lean manufacturing and all. If possible, just go and see the audit once. You don't have to pay for them at this point of time. It makes more sense for you to do these things once you have around 3 to 5 years of work experience. So that is when you'll be able to actually learn and apply them both. So it makes sense for you to do the Six Sigma certifications at a later stage. But now, just to be aware of how it works, you can definitely do a lot of reading up. It adds a lot of value. So yeah, so coming back to what the industry wants entrepreneurs these days. Okay. Now, let's do a very small exercise to help understand the mindset aspect. Okay. Very simple question. Five images on the screen, which is the odd one out. Can anyone answer? Something going on in your mind? E, okay. D, All are different. Can I have some more answers, please? Akshay says E. Salim says D. Gitanjali says A, B or D, not sure about it. Meghna says, Baljeet says C, Pushpraj says C. Okay, now those of you who gave answers, why do you think your answer is correct? Pushpraj, why do you think C is the odd one out? Or Avanti, why do you think C is the odd one out?
Ma'am, because the sea is made up of the straight line also and the curvature also.
Okay, C has a curvature and a point also, a vertex and a point. Is that what you say? I mean, a curvature and a
Straight line.
uh,
Straight line.
okay. All right. Okay. Can anybody else? You're right. Pushpraj, there is no other. Are you Pushpraj?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. There is no other shape among the 5 options that has two straight lines converging to a point and a curvature. So you're right. You're not wrong. Baljit, can I ask you, why is E the odd one out? Why did you choose E, or anybody else who has chosen E? Can you give me an answer?
Ma'am, in all the 4 options like A, B, C. Hello, am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Your name, please.
Raghu, ma'am.
Raghu. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So I guess maybe in E, ma'am, when you in all the 4 options, any 2 points beat any 2 points on the surface. If you connect them, they lie within the surface, ma'am. But then when you choose E, when you choose the vertices of the figure, then you'll get the line outside the figure, ma'am. Maybe that is.
Okay.
So E would be maybe non-convex and remaining 4 are convex. So I'm thinking E, ma'am. I'm not sure if it's correct or not.
Okay. Great. I can't refuse. I can't deny that argument. I mean, you made perfect logical sense. Gitanjali, why is A the odd one out?
Yes, ma'am. B, C, and D, E, they have sharp points. Like
Okay.
2 edges are meeting, but a circle doesn't have. So I told in that sense.
Now,
Ma'am,
is there anybody? Yeah.
ma'am, I'm sorry. Is okay. So each all 5 are different, ma'am. Is that the answer?
I don't know. The question was for you.
Because each figure is different in its own way. So I guess maybe that would be the answer at the end.
So these answers that you people are giving me, right? You're
Like,
justifying your answers, right?
like different people have different answers. So at the end, maybe you'll tell that all 5 figures are different in their unique way.
So will my answer be wrong if I say that?
No, ma'am. Even that's not wrong, actually.
That is also not wrong, no?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, this question doesn't have a wrong answer or a right answer, right?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
there a wrong
Agreed.
answer? You can contest any answer. You can agree or any answer. You can justify your answer.
Yes.
You can argue with somebody else for every answer,
Like we can
right?
give any answer unless, but we have to justify it.
You have to justify it, right? Now, what we have to consider here is when I showed these 5 pictures and I said pick the odd one out. What was the first thought in your mind? What did you first start doing? How did the machine in your the machine in your skull,
Looking for
how did that start?
similarities and dissimilarities.
Looking for similarities and dissimilarities, right? So what you basically did is started figuring out the solution. Am I right? The moment the question was
Yes, yes,
asked,
ma'am.
you started figuring out the solution. Now, did anybody take a minute or 2 minutes to understand the problem itself?
Ma'am, we didn't get. What do you mean by understanding the problem? Like the question you're talking about.
The question, yes. Now, the problem here is we have to find the odd one out. Okay. Now, if you realize there is a problem with the problem itself, right?
Okay, like okay.
You get
Like
what I'm
so.
saying?
Yes.
This is what we usually do. Whenever we are faced with a question like this, right? We directly jump to solutions without trying to dig deeper and understand the problem in a better way. Now, how do we analyze this? Now, the moment this question was asked, instead of starting to compare shapes, if I would have thought, Okay, now on what basis should the odd one out be chosen? Are there any parameters for choosing the odd one out? If probably we would have analyzed the question a little better, we would have somehow understood that, before even identifying one and thinking that that is the solution, we could have probably, the thought would have come to mind that actually everything is different. And somebody said that, I think Sachin said that, if I'm not wrong. He was one of the first ones to say that. So when we talk of entrepreneurs and when we talk of um, employees, employees will usually jump to the solutions because we assume that the problem is defined by the managers or the companies or whatever. Okay, but a lot of time the solution to the problem depends on how we are defining the problem itself. Now every problem has multiple solutions and every problem has different perspectives to it, right? You can't say for a lot of problems there is no one right solution, there are multiple right solutions. So how do you think about it? There's this story about there's this quotation by Einstein. He said, if I had 60 minutes to solve a problem, I would spend 50 minutes thinking of the problem, and once I have clarity about the problem, it's only going to take me 10 minutes to find the solution. So that is one of the elements of an intrapreneurial or entrepreneurial mindset. So let us say you're working somewhere and something is not working. Now, instead of trying to figure out how to make it work, we have to figure out why it is not working in the first place. Unless we understand why something is not working, we can never come up with a solution that will actually address that issue. Right? Now, I might come up with 5 different solutions. Now, how do I choose which is the best one? Can I make that decision if I don't have a proper understanding of the problem itself? I can't do that. So this is the kind of mindset that is required for you to solve the everyday problems that you'll face in your workplaces. Because there, you will face not simple problems, you'll face complex problems. There'll be problems from the development team, there'll be problems from the customer end, there'll be problems from the production team, there'll be problem from all sides. So do you have it in you to take a 360-degree holistic view of the problem, understand the problem? Now, I'm not saying that you have to be expert at all this at this point of time. These kind of things come with experience, right? But a company will definitely see how strong your skills are in analysis. Right. So this is one of the qualities that the industry is really seeking, these kind of skills. Now, if you're being considered for a job, it is a given that you have to be technically competent. Nothing can beat that. Okay. All these other aspects will come only when the company is sure that you have those basics strong and you are capable of delivering on technology. Now, technology, I don't just mean IT, it can be any technology, civil, mechanical, chemical, whichever field you're in. Those technical skills are trainable skills, those are learnable skills. But these kind of skills like analysis, the problem solving mindset, the empathy factor, the coaching mindset, all the previous those 10 skills we saw, this is very difficult to train people in these things. These take a lot of time also to develop, right? So it is these kind of mindsets that the industry is looking for. So problem solving is a mindset. Now this is a very interesting case study. We'll have a quick view just for you to understand how problems look like. This is a real situation. Okay, it was a very interesting case study where General Motors in the United States, they launched a model of cars called, like, is it hot inside the car? No, it's not hot inside the car. I'll tell you what the problem is. This they launched a model called Pontiac. Okay, and they received a complaint from a customer saying that I bought a new model of the Pontiac and my car doesn't like vanilla ice cream. Now this is exactly the letter. I'll give you a minute. Just read this. Okay, so this is exactly what the employee sent in a written complaint. This is not the day of social media. This is even before the internet was in the picture, probably in the 1950s or 60s, sometime those days. So that ice cream melts every time. No, this is a much more interesting problem. So read it and then we'll have a discussion. I'll pause for a minute. If you're done reading it, let me know. I'll change to the next slide. So we are clear with the problem. The complaint was, whenever I go to buy ice cream after dinner, every day I go to buy ice cream after dinner, only when I order vanilla ice cream, my car refuses to start. If I buy any other flavor of the ice cream, my car doesn't have a problem starting. So the conclusion is my car doesn't like vanilla ice cream. Now, if you were the engineer or you were the head of General Motors, what would you do? Would we do people actually take this kind of complaint seriously? My car doesn't like, why does my car not like vanilla ice cream? If somebody asks you that question, forget about you being from a motor company. Suppose your friend comes and says, my car doesn't like vanilla ice cream. Already many tensions in life. Yes, true. But the president of General Motors, he said, okay, let's see what he actually means, because this person who put in a complaint, he was not a illiterate guy, or he was not somebody who was not in his right mind. He was a well-educated, successful person, and such person, if somebody like that is making a claim, there must be something to it. So then General Motors started figuring out, why does this car not start when he buys vanilla ice cream only, and when he buys other ice cream? So if it's a problem with the car, it should stop for all flavors. Why does the car have aversion only towards that one flavor? And then they did some investigation, and they figured out. And the solution, and what they came up was with was, whenever this man went to buy vanilla ice cream, okay, the time he took to complete that transaction of buying was less when compared to buying any other flavor, because vanilla ice cream was the most in demand flavor, so they kept that in the front of the shop. Other flavors were kept at the back of the shop. Okay, so it took more time for the shopkeeper to go to the back of his store and get it. But vanilla ice cream, it was there in the front. So those days, the automobile technology was just developing, right? It was not as advanced as it is now. So because the stop time of the car was so less, the car did not get time to cool down sufficiently, and hence when he was starting it, it was not starting. So what was the ultimate problem as identified by the customer? Now, he doesn't know all these things about the valves of the car and all these technical things. For him, it is like, my car doesn't like vanilla ice cream. But when you dig deeper into that problem, the engineer who was assigned to address this issue, if he would have found it ridiculous and this man is lying, we have not got any other complaints. Only how can only this one person come and say that my car is not liking vanilla ice cream? If it would have been left off to ridicule, then this model would have been a big failure, because this was actually, probably others did not realize it, but it was an existing problem, and the problem was with the vapor lock system. Right now, where did the problem start from? It started from something very, very ridiculous, but actually they were able to understand what the real problem is. They had to change the vapor lock system, and then the car started liking vanilla ice cream. Right. So when you will also have problems like these. So again, coming back to what the industry wants people who are able to dig deeper, who are able to bring in new perspectives, who are able to solve problems, right? So this is another important aspect when it comes to training your mind. Okay, now you can apply these aspects to analyze the industry as such, the changing technologies. Always keep in touch with what is happening. Now, right now, two technologies that are, if I have to name one right now, I would say data science is doing huge these days. Okay, now how can I say that? Because data is the next gold, right? There is so much data, and companies are struggling to make sense of data. Companies are like, we have the possibility, we have the capability of making informed decisions based on customer behavior because we have so much data available. Now, all we need is somebody who can make sense of this data, clean up the data, draw some conclusions out of this data, and give it to us so that we can make some good decisions. So, how do we say that data science? It's not just a random statement that data scientists are going to be in demand. It is the happenings in the industry. So you've got to analyze the news, you've got to analyze these kind of developments, and you should be in the mind to understand what is the next upcoming thing. And there is enough information available for us to, understand these aspects. So divergent thinking is when there is a problem and you never totally discard anything as ridiculous, like you saw in the example previously. Every idea, every possibility, consider it. And it's the first part of problem solving where you're actually using your creative mindset. You're not using logic there. However ridiculous, put the idea down on a piece of paper. Okay, that is when you're diverging your thinking process. And then once you have listed all the ideas, all the possibilities, irrespective of its relevance, irrespective of how practical it is, just don't apply logic there. Just put in every idea possible. And then in the second part, you start analyzing those ideas and keep eliminating them until you come to a solution. Now, all this has to be based on the understanding of the problem itself, right? So divergent thinking, convergent thinking is again a mindset that you have to train yourself in. That is something the industry really values these days. Another small exercise. What do you see here?
An empty circle.
An empty circle, okay. Anybody else? Circle, Hemant says circle, yes.
With a border, with a colorful border.
Yeah, because there is a border only, it is a circle, no?
Oh.
If it's no border, then it's plain space. Black circle on white background, okay. Can anybody see anything else there?
Ma'am, I want to ask that from which perspective? It may be circle, it may be desk or something else. Depend on our perspective.
Yeah, so what is your perspective? What do you see there?
I'm not able to figure it out that in the same perspective, I'm seeing kind of circle, but if I make an effort to see it from another perspective, I will have a disc with white color and a border with blue color.
Very good.
Something like this. So actually depends on perspective. It may be something else.
Yes. Can it be a bangle?
Yes, maybe.
Can it be a biscuit?
Yep.
Can it be a roti? Can it be an idli?
A circular shape, ma'am.
It's a circle shape, yes. But what comes to your mind? White ball? Okay, somebody says white ball. I want you all to start looking beyond what is obvious to your eye. You get what I'm saying? You get the point here? Anybody can come and say this is a circle. But what value are you adding with your unique perspective?
That border separates out the content outside the circle and inside the circle.
I agree. So if I get a LKG child and I show him or her the same picture and ask what it is, what would be the answer?
Even he'll tell circle.
He will also tell circle. You're also telling me circle. Can I expect something better from you? Can I expect something else from you? All I'm asking you to do is start practicing to look beyond what is obvious to your eye. There is so much more there. And that is the seed of creativity. If you just look at something the way it is, that means you're kind of putting an end to your creative process. You always have to figure out, okay, I know this is a circle, so what's the big deal? What else can it be? Broaden your vision, broaden your perspective, broaden the way you look at things. And that is when you'll start. Now, this is a very simple example, right? Now, this is exactly how our mind works also. When we look at a problem, we just look at the problem the way it is. And if we are restricting ourselves to thinking what it is, it's a full stop there. What is the answer, Raghu? Again, the answer for me is so many things. I see the moon, I see the sun, I see so many things there. I'm not restricting my mind to just seeing a circle there, but I'm trying to look beyond what is there in front of me, and I'm looking at the possibilities that this throws up at me. Okay, so if I look at the screen, I don't just see a circle. Yes, it is a circle. Nobody is saying it is not a circle. It is definitely a circle, but it is. I don't have to restrict my mind and say it is just a circle. There are so many other things I can do with it, right? This one. Now, can you think beyond and not tell me it is a rectangle? Because I know it is a rectangle. You don't have to tell me it is a rectangle. What I want to see is what is your perspective of this?
First image that flashed in my mind was door. Kind of door.
Didn't get you. Can you repeat that?
Door. The first image that flashed in my mind was door.
Door. Okay, very good. Avanti says paper. Yeah, so see, all this comes with practice. You have to start, even if you're looking at something very normal. Now you're still in college. There is time for you to face the industry. There's time for you to get a job. So train your mind to look at things in different perspectives. Don't restrict your mind. The moment you start expanding your perspective, trust me, the kind of ideas that come into your mind, they're amazing. They'll help you with your projects, that will help you with, we thought about being innovative. The industry wants to see what are the innovative things you have done in your college. Have you just done what your professor have asked you to do, or have you done something beyond that? They want such skills because in their work, those kind of skills are needed. So they want somebody who is looking beyond layout of land. Yes, painting. Why can't it be the wings on the satellite, just flying in the space? Why can't it be the solar panels? There are so many things. You've got to let your mind break the boundaries and just go beyond that. So these are the kind of things that the industry actually wants. So again, comes back to perspective, right? Okay, in the interest of time, I'll skip some of these things. Okay, so the best way to sharpen your skills, make yourself more industry relevant, is to use them and practice them. Okay. Now, coming to the other aspect, which is understanding the job market. Are we kind of clear? Did I kind of make sense in helping you understand what the industry needs?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the industry doesn't want a yes boss kind of person. The industry doesn't want, and why I'm telling you, because see, when a company, this topic came up, when a company is coming to a college like NIT Warangal, they do not want yes boss people. For yes boss people, they can go to some other college where probably the students are not as good quality. I'm sorry, I'm saying that. I know it's a very crude way of saying it, but a company comes to a premium institute because they want people with a higher skill set, and you have to give them that higher skill set, thinking that I am capable of solving problems, I'm capable of having a broader perspective, I'm capable of looking at things in unique ways, and hence I'm worth the investment that you're making in me. That is the kind of message that the industry wants to hear from. I have conditioned my mind to handle confusion. So these are the kind of things that you have to portray to them, right? Now, the job market, again, there are different kinds of companies, and each company has its own uniqueness. There are micro businesses, these are small businesses, there are small and medium enterprises, there are large companies, and there are startups. Now, it's your choice where you want to go. Nothing is wrong, again, nothing is right. It depends on every kind of enterprise has its own advantages. totally is a personal choice. Okay, me personally, if the choice was given to me, I would always go for a small or medium enterprise or a startup. The reason being, the amount you get to learn in these small setups is incredible. Because the team is small, you'll get to interact with everybody, you'll get to understand a lot of processes. And if you work in a startup or a small business, say for 2 years or 2.5 years, it is as good as doing a complete MBA, because you understand marketing, you understand finance, you understand everything, you understand how a business setup runs. The disadvantages: for the first 2.5 years of your life, your pay will not be very good. Nowadays, startups are paying well. Startups are also paying well. A medium or small enterprise might not pay you so well, but the kind of knowledge that you get working in these companies, it's totally unmatched. If you work in a large company, your finances will be secure. Probably your job will be more secure. But big companies have very, very structured way of working, right? So you might learn a lot about the process that you're working in, but in terms of exposure to other kind of processes, that will not happen. Okay, again, nothing is wrong, nothing is right. It is a personal choice. So when you go for an interview, you have to understand what kind of a business that is, and then you have to project your skills in the same way. Even now, I'm working in a startup, and I given a chance, I would always like to work in the startup environment because I like the challenge. Again, you might not agree with me. I don't expect everybody to agree with me, right? So again, it's a personal choice that you have to make, but be clear about these kind of choices. People who do not want too much of a roller coaster ride, good thing is large companies. People who have that kind of thing of having feeling that rush and that excitement, startups is a good thing. Again, the pay might not be very high, but 2.5 years, and large companies appreciate people who have worked in startups these days. That's another trend I have seen. They don't mind. Few years back, large companies were not open to hiring people from startups, but these days they are, because when they work in startups, they develop all these entrepreneurial skills that companies are interested in. So the thing is, the job market itself is again slightly ambiguous, because if there are 100 jobs available in the market, only 25% of these jobs will be seen. Okay, it is for these 25% jobs that people come for campus placements, or what you see in all these job portals like Naukri and all these are the only the 25% job. The remaining 75% jobs are not even visible in the market. So this might not be very applicable for you at this point of time when you're starting out, because most of you will probably get campus placements. But going further on in your career, if you want a career shift later on, this is important for you to know. You can't just depend on what you see, right? The way you build your network. See, 45% depends on networking, on referrals. So all these are very important. the better your network, the better the inputs you have from them, and you will be able to understand which direction to take. Where is the next growth area? Where should I go next? Okay, those kind of things will definitely help you. Now, every company has their own unique way of putting out the job descriptions. Okay. Now, it is important for us to understand before that, what is an interviewer actually thinking when he is interviewing you? The job description is there. Okay. Now, there are multiple thoughts that go on in the interview process. Now, so according to you, how much time do you think an interview goes on for? What is the duration of an interview? Usually
15 to 20 minutes now.
15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, sometimes it might go up to 30 minutes, but usually for freshers and all, it's not more than 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, 20 to 30 minutes is the ideal thing. Now, when do you think the interviewer makes up his or her mind that I'm going to select this person or not select this person? In which minute? First 5 minutes? First 5 minutes? Exactly. First 5 minutes, the interviewer is going to make up his mind. Okay. Now, why is he still talking to you over the next 20-25 minutes then, if he has made up his mind in the first 5 minutes? To verify our character and know more about us. So basically, the first 5 minutes, he makes up his mind, and next 20 minutes, he is just trying to not verify you, but verify whether his decision about you is correct or not. Okay. So first 5 minutes, I make up my mind that whether I want this person or I don't want the person. The next 25 minutes, I'm just trying to reconfirm my own opinion of whether the choice I made with this person in the first 5 minutes is right or wrong. Now, that decision depends on a lot of factors, of course, technical competence, but also the kind of work ethics. Will this person be an asset to the company, or will he be a liability? Will this person adapt to the culture? Will this person have that collaborative work? Will this person be able to handle pressure? Now, to check all these things, the next 20-25 minutes happen. But the 80% of the decision is definitely made in the first 5 minutes. Now, how do we capitalize on that? Now, the good thing for us is if the decision is made in the first 5 minutes, it is in 5 minutes are enough for us to convince somebody. So that means all I have to do is make a very good impression in the first 5 minutes. Then most of my job is done. Okay. Now to do that, it is very, very important that you start from the job description itself. The job description should be your cue. Okay. Now every job description will have 4 main elements. The name and description of the company will be there. Make sure that you understand the company before you go to an interview. Okay, so this is how you kind of decipher, or you kind of break up the job description and use it to your benefit. Now, verify the company, go on LinkedIn, read the profile, go to the company's website, even if it is a major company, even if it's a global company. Still, you do your homework, right? Understand the history of the company and get a little bit of information about the company itself. What kind of projects do they do? What are the challenges they faced? Are they doing well economically, financially? Because every company, they announce their quarterly results and all that. And all this information is available for you on your fingertips. So there's no excuse for you not to know them. So the first part of the company, where the name and description of the company itself is there, that is for you to understand the company and for you to know what to expect from the company. Okay. Now, the other elements of the job description, which are the roles and responsibilities that are listed, the skills required, education qualifications, this is for you to know what the company expects from you. So a job description will give you both these elements. What you should expect from the company and what the company expects from you. Both these elements will be available in the job description itself. Okay. So how do you kind of break it up further? So yeah, so these are the things about the employer, a little bit of history about the company, the vision and mission about the company. Currently, what is the focus of the company? What are they working on? What are their verticals? What are the notable projects that the company is handling? Has the company been in news recently? So all this is a little bit of background check that you have to do about the company. There are multiple websites where you can go and get. The official company website will not give you complete information. They will only project what they want to project. So a lot of information will not be there on the official website, but to know a lot of things you can go. But then if you want to know really what the company is doing, then you have to go to the other things as well. Now, if you are checking the LinkedIn profile of the company, remember that the company is also going to check your LinkedIn profile. So building your LinkedIn profile is also, I'm sure you have one of these sessions one of these days which addresses that, but your LinkedIn profile is also a very important aspect in this entire job search aspect. Now, I'll just take 5 more minutes if that's okay with you. Do you have another session at 11? Dr. Spurti?
No, Shruti, we don't have any.
So I can carry on for another 5-10 minutes?
Please.
Yeah, all right. So we'll take one. Heard that HR people go through our social media profile as well. Is that true? Yes, it is true. Raghu, you're absolutely right. And that is why when I talk to students who do their courses with us, before we forward their profiles to companies, we ensure that they clean up their social profiles. Because in an interview you will say the right things, you will say things that the company wants to hear, and the company knows that, the HR knows that you're not going to say the correct, you're not going to give the correct information, you're only going to give the right information, right? What are your strengths and weaknesses? You will have some answer in mind which you will give, but the reality is visible in all your social media profiles. So it's important that you kind of clean up if you have made some controversial kind of comments or all that, clean that up. I'm not against people having an opinion. It is good that if you have an opinion on certain things, but if you have been endorsing anti-social kind of thing or hate messages and all that, that's absolutely not okay. And no company is going to take people who get into those kind of controversies. So please clean up your social media profiles. LinkedIn profile has to be very professional and strong. Instead, for a lark, you might have just put some comment, and you will not even think about it. This might have happened like a year ago, but that will still reflect, and it will still be one of the factors of decision making for the HR. So make sure that now onwards you be careful about what you post on social media, and if there is something controversial, clean it up, please. A company pays around 6 rupees to 15 rupees these days. That is the price of information about you and your social profiles. It is as low as 6 rupees. There are these companies who kind of, these are not the white collar kind of companies. They're a little bit of shady companies, but they will do all sorts of things and they'll dig out your history, and some companies do use that. I mean, nobody says it openly, but little bit of background check is done using these shady techniques also. So 6 rupees to 15 rupees is what they will have to pay, and it is very, and this happens in matrimonials also. So for your later on, even matrimonial websites, those that run background checks, they also pay around 6 to 15 rupees, and it's that cheap to get the complete social profile of a person. So it's not a very nice thing to know, but it's good to be aware of it so you can be careful. So yeah, so that is very important. So let's take one job description as an example and try to see how we can understand how it works. Okay, now this is the list of responsibilities that the company will give you, and say these are the kind of things that you want to do, that they will expect you to do. Now just read these things, okay, and pick out the keywords. Whenever you're reading a job description, this is a process that you can follow. Okay, try and understand what the company is asking from you. Infer, pull out the skills that they're looking. Now the skills, if you see this job description, they've only told you what you have to do. They have not mentioned the skills that they're looking for. Okay, some companies, they also have a separate section where they talk about the skills required. Some companies might not, but irrespective of that, you should be able to infer the skills required. Is this a call center job? Yes, it is a call center job. So I've just taken this as an example. Okay, might not be very relevant to you, but this is easier for us to kind of analyze. So the first point says, okay, so if these are the points that are given, and if we have to identify what are the key things, okay, so the ones that are highlighted in red, so these are the main action points that the company is looking for. Okay, you should be in a situation to process claims, handle calls, understand the basic professional standards and establish process. You should be able to make decisions. You should be able to input data. You should be able to solve customer issues. You should have a commitment to customer satisfaction. So these are the key things that the company is asking you to do. Okay, now these being the key skills, key requirements, I'm sorry, not skills, these being the key requirements, what are the skills that are needed for you to be able to do this job well? Can you come up with certain skills? Now these are the 5-6 things. Now whatever be the job description, the process of analyzing is the same. Okay, so first you read all the things and then pick out what the company is actually expecting from you. Okay, now once you understand what the company is expecting from you, then figure out what are the skills that you need to project to them. Okay, now processing claims, handling incoming calls, making outgoing calls, what is the skill that is required to do that, to meet that expectation properly? What is the major skill that you require? Communication skills, yes. Is it only communication skills? Negotiation skills, yes. Listening skills, very good, Meghna. Appreciate that answer. Now the second point, understand the basic professional standards and established procedures. Convincing skills, I agree, Raghu. Understand, now second point, understand the basic professional standards and established procedures. What kind of skill do you require? What kind of skill should you have to meet this requirement? Could be problem solving, could be a little bit of analytical skills. Yeah, so all these, right? Making decisions. Again, this is a requirement. So what is a skill that you need to have for this kind of a requirement? Input data into company platform. What is the skill that you need to meet this requirement? So data entry, yes, data entry is the requirement. What is the skill that you need? Leadership skills, maybe not that much, Hemant. Leadership, probably you should be able to lead yourself, but this is not much of a leadership role itself. Focus, yes. Focus, I agree. The other important skill that the company is looking for is attention to detail, because you can't end up putting wrong data in the company. Now, the company is not openly telling you that we are looking for people who have attention to detail. The company is not openly saying that. But since they have listed the requirements in such a way, we should be able to infer what the company actually wants. So attention to detail is a very important part of this profile. Solving customer issues means being calm, being able to analyze what their actual pain point is. Remember the my car doesn't like vanilla ice cream example? A lot of times the customer will not even know what their problem is. They will come and tell you the symptoms of their problem. They will not tell you the real problem. It is up to us to actually talk to them and figure out what actually the problem is. And until you ask them certain questions, they will also not know what their problem is. And that happens. Patience, yes. Now, from the job description, and you all are technical people, whatever be the job description, so you've got to do a little practice. Go to Naukri.com, go to different websites, pull out job descriptions from them, read the job description points that are given, and from there, try to pull out the important aspects and then see what kind of skills are required. So once you know what kind of skills are required, you have to customize your resume and your introduction to suit that particular skill set. Your resume and the way you introduce yourself cannot be static everywhere. It has to be dynamic. And on what does it have to be based? It based on all the requirements that you're inferring from the job description. So a job description is actually very, very important. A lot of people don't take it seriously. They don't even read the entire job description well, but it's very, very important to start your interview preparation from the job description. So you can actually get a lot of details from there. And that will help you present yourself in a way that makes the company feel that, okay, this person is fit for my job. Now, can't the HR see through this, ma'am? Can't they figure out what we have done? They can definitely figure out, but they will appreciate you because you took the effort, you made the effort, you put in that effort to actually analyze the job description and prepare the way you present yourself. That quality itself will be appreciated. Okay. So that is the importance of job description. This is the way you have to analyze the job description. Even if the skill sets are mentioned in a separate section, the roles and responsibilities section itself will give you a lot of details. Your LinkedIn profile has to be updated regularly. Now, it's not just the social media profiles, but there are also these digital hubs like GitHub and Kaggle. For your own specializations, you will definitely have other things. Kaggle is for data science. I know that because I work with data science students. GitHub is another one where you can put up your projects and all that. So for people from the IT software streams, it's important to have these two, at least the GitHub profile. So look out for different platforms like these that are appropriate to your subject, okay, and see how you can project yourself on that. Now, if I am a recruiter for software engineers, let us say specifically I'm looking to hire a data analyst, I'm going to go to that person's Kaggle profile and see what is the kind of work that person has done in terms of projects or whatever it is on Kaggle, because that will give me a realistic idea of what that person has done. His resume will just give me very basic data, but I will not just depend on that. Right? So profiles like these are also very important. Like I said, your social media profiles have to be cleaned up. So that has to be a conscious effort. So that is how you actually tailor your presentation for every interview you attend based on the job description, right? So this session we have covered, I think, I don't know, but I hope I was able to do justice to the three aspects that were spoken about. How do we understand the industry? What does the industry actually mean? Now, like I said, what I'm telling now, 6 months down the line, might be something else. I don't know. The company might say we need another skill also. But yeah, so you've got to keep yourself updated. Today's session is really a bomb, man. Thanks, Raghu. I hope you found value. Second, understanding the job market itself. Make conscious decisions about the kind of company that you're applying for. Don't just get blinded by big names, because while big names definitely have their advantages, there are certain disadvantages. Smaller companies definitely have disadvantages. The ride is going to be rocky. It's not going to be smooth, but 5 years down the line, it might be an advantage. Again, there is no right answer, no wrong answer. You have to make the call for yourself. You can, of course, talk to your mentors. You can talk to your faculty, get feedback from them, take their suggestions. Don't jump to something. Don't make emotional decisions in these kind of things. Make an informed decision, but make the right decision, right? So that is it from me. I'll leave you with this thought. There is no job that is not relevant. There is a place for skilled people in the industry always. If you're skilled, you can say, ma'am, I'm from this particular field. Does this field have scope? Wrong question. The question itself is wrong. The question is not whether this field has scope or not. The question is, am I making myself worthy to get a job in that field? If you're among the bottom 10 in that field, maybe you will not get. Some fields, like, I don't want to name them, but some fields, even if you're not the best, you will get a job. Some fields, if you're the best, you will get a job, but you will get a job if you're the best. So take yourself to a level where the industry finds, for the industry, trust me, the bottom line is my investment in this person worth it or not? If you can convince that your investment in me is worth it, they will take you up. Okay. So I'll leave you with that thought, and that's it from me. If we have one or two questions, we can take that. I think we've already exceeded time. You're welcome, Meghna. I'm really glad. I was, when I was preparing for this session, I was kind of, my mind was going all over the place. I was like, how do I actually bring all these things together? I hope I was able to do justice. But yeah, I'm on the WhatsApp group. If you have any other questions, I'm available there. Dr. Spurti, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you for a very nice session. I must tell you, from actually for sharing your story from the other side of the fence. So whenever we try to talk about placements and recruitment and a lot of other stuff, people from the academia would talk from this side of the fence. So thank you for bringing in that perspective, one. And actually letting the participants know as to how important it is for them to start even much before they actually for the interview, the kind of background work they need to do, and what the HR personnel actually mean when they ask those questions, every aspect, I must tell you. Thank you very much for all the elements that you brought to this session and very beautifully knitting it together. Thank you very much. And I am sorry for all the participants who couldn't attend the session today. But then thank you very much. And I'm looking forward, we're all looking forward, in fact, for your session on the 8th of July. Thank you.
Yes, that's next Saturday, right?
That's Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday. All right, sure. I'll be there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All the best, everyone. We'll catch up in another 5 days.
All right. Guys, did you have any questions? You can always post your questions in the WhatsApp group. Hope you enjoyed the session today. And should you have any further queries, any other information that you require, you can always use the WhatsApp group for any communication. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Enjoy your weekend. Tomorrow, the session will be as usual at 3 p.m. Your quant session will be at 3 p.m. And on Monday, also, you will have your session at 9:30 a.m. like today. Amrapali Datta will be there. So all of this week, we're going to focus on interview skills and how to prepare for your interview. Basically, the focus is on interview readiness. All right. Do you have any questions for us?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great then. Thank you very much, everyone. I take this opportunity to thank our trainer, Shruti Kadam, for taking the session. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Thank you. Have a nice weekend.